Hi everyone, thanks for joining me today. I'm Teresa Brett, and I published the book Parenting for Social Change and also have the website parentingforsocialchange.com. And one of the things I wanted to talk with you about today was understanding oppression and discrimination. And as a professional, when I worked in universities, I now do consulting, I considered myself a person who was committed to social change, social justice, worked with students to try to create social justice education programs and programs that served what had been previously marginalized student populations on university campuses. And I became a parent during that time as well when I was working for universities, specifically at the University of Michigan and the University of Texas at Austin. And when I became a parent, I spent a lot of time, as many of us do, and as a person who was committed to social justice and social change, really thinking about what it was I could do as a parent to ensure that the child who came into my life would grow up with this same commitment to equity, to justice, to treating people with respect, to understanding that we do have differences and commonalities, but with a fundamental belief that they had an obligation to treat others with respect and to understand what those social identities were, but to also begin to work toward change and creating more equality in our society. So I read a lot, as many of us do as parents, and I thought a lot about that and how I could do that. And what I came to this revelation about 5 years into my journey as a parent was that although I was living those values in the work that I was doing in universities, I was not living those values as a parent. And in fact, although I was going to work in working toward creating greater equality and inclusiveness on university campuses, in fact, when I went home and I was committed to empowering students and empowering students who came from populations that had been marginalized in our society and in universities, when I went home, fundamentally what I did was I disempowered my own son in that process. And that process of coming to the realization that I was in fact participating and perpetuating adultism or ageism, that realization really changed my life and helped me to understand in ways that I had never understood before the roots of oppression and discrimination. And fundamentally, at its core, those roots begin in childhood. And it doesn't begin in childhood the way that most of us that are committed to social justice education or social justice and social change think. You know, we often talk about how children learn racism or sexism or heterosexism at home. They learn it from parents who are bigoted, from parents who are heterosexist or racist or homophobic. That's what we believe, that's what happens, is it comes from the parents to the child. It also comes from broader society as well, because we reinforce these negative stereotypes about various social identity groups in the media, in television, in movies, and music. And although some of that may be true, and I'm not denying that that is the case, what I have come to understand as a parent and what really spurred me on my website, parentingforsocialchange.com, and in writing my book, Parenting for Social Change, Transform Childhood, Transform the World, was that the roots of oppression don't come just from bigoted parents who teach their children how to be sexist or racist or heterosexist. That the roots of oppression really are fundamentally begin in the adult-child relationship and in how our broader society views childhood and children. And really it's about adultism and ageism. And I think that's one of the pieces that I never heard addressed in any substantive way in the work that I did, in the reading that I did, in the teaching that I did around social justice and in intergroup dialogue. And so I began to really think about and integrate the experiences I had in universities as an administrator, as a teacher, as a leader in organizations, with my own experiences as a parent, and really began examining my own behavior and understanding that what children learn throughout the experience of childhood is not only about stereotypes about certain groups, their own group perhaps, other groups, that they are a part of, social identity groups, whether it's around race or gender or sexual orientation. But what children fundamentally learn in both the parent-child relationship and the adult-child relationship, whether it's with teachers or clergy or whomever it might be, adults that they encounter in social situations, is they learn how the more powerful have the right to control the less powerful. And that is fundamentally the root of oppression in our society. It's not about those we want to say are not like us, those who are racist, and teach their children to be racist. It is about our own relationships, good, well-meaning people like myself. I was one of those people. I still am unlearning and relearning how it is to be in a relationship with the children in my life from a place of respect and trust, acknowledging that I have power over them, but working in ways to try to make sure that I use that power to create space for them and empower them in their lives as children in an adult-dominated world. And I think that it is hard for us to look within ourselves and to challenge the privilege that we have as adults and to challenge the notion, because we come in as parents and we believe and we feel it. We want the best for our children. We love our children. And yet what we do over and over and over, and we may be social justice, committed to social justice. We may be social justice educators. We may be community organizers. We may be lots of people who are committed to eliminating racism and sexism and heterosexism and ableism. And yet if we go home and we use our power as adults to diminish children, to take away their power, to control them, then fundamentally we will never achieve our goals in eliminating oppression in our society until we fundamentally change the adult-child relationship. And that's what I want to challenge you to think about. Is not think about the work that you're doing outside, the work that you're doing professionally, but as a parent to really think about the work that you are doing in your own home and the ways in which you are living justice in your own home, the ways in which you are acknowledging the power, institutional and structural power you have as an adult, and working to use that power to have children's voices matter, have children's needs matter, and to fundamentally change that dynamic. If we are able to change the view of childhood, then our children don't grow up learning that the more powerful have the right to control the less powerful. And as they grow up, they learn a different way of being in the world. And that has to be our commitment for those of us committed to social justice and social change. It's not about necessarily, it can be. We can work on the work that we're doing outside in fighting against racism, fighting against sexism, fighting against heterosexism. But if fundamentally when we go home, the work we're doing outside will mean nothing if we're not able to redefine the parent-child relationship or the adult-child relationship. And what is so difficult about fundamentally changing that relationship is, just as in all the other ways in which we are socialized and we learn misinformation about groups and we become enculturated, the same thing happens for us as children and as adults. So when we are children, we have the experience of disempowerment. We have the experience of adults controlling our lives. We have the experience of being powerless to be able to make decisions in matters that are important to us and in matters that aren't necessarily important to us as children. And so we learn that that is a normal part of life. In fact, what we are doing is normalizing power over and control dynamics. And that's what really has to change. The broader social change, we can continue to work on that, but we fundamentally have to address the power dynamics in the child-parent and the child-adult relationship. So we're children, we're disempowered, we don't have a voice. We learn that those who are more powerful get to make the rules. They get to decide when we go to bed. They get to decide what we eat. They get to decide that we can go to the bathroom when we're at school. All of those things. Those are the things that we learn. And as we get older, when we're in those positions of power, we may not question the right that we have to use that power to control others who are less powerful. So from adultism from that fundamental adult-child relationship, which is about power and control, stems racism, sexism, heterosexism, ableism, all the other isms that we go out there and fight as social justice educators, as social change agents, as people who are committed to creating change. Because if we can't fundamentally change that, the work that we're doing is really just a drop in the bucket. Because unlearning those things, or like me, we're hypocrites. We go out, we fight for the cause that we believe in, we work for that, and we go home and we live out power and control with the children in our lives. That's what I experienced myself. I had to confront myself and really say, what am I doing? What kind of hypocrite am I? How am I living the values of my work, of my professional life in my home? And I wasn't at all. And it was very difficult because I had created this identity around being committed to social justice and being committed to empowerment. And yet, in the most fundamental relationship in my life, that between myself and the child who shared my life, I didn't live those values at all. I believed that my parenting responsibility was to exercise my control to make sure that he ate the right things, that he did the right things, that he behaved the right way, that he used the right tone of voice, that he said he was polite, that yes, he was not racist and he was not sexist and not all of those things. And yet fundamentally what I was teaching him, the underlying message was about the more powerful have the right to control the less powerful. And so this is my message to you. It's really an introduction, and there are more videos for us to talk about some of the dynamics and some of the social messages. But what I want to ask you today is to think about the ways in which we in our culture, in our society, have defined adult-child relationships and how those relationships really are the core of discrimination and oppression in our society. And if we don't address those relationships, if we don't fundamentally eradicate adultism and ageism from birth, then our work, the commitment that we have to creating equality, to creating justice, is really for nothing. Because all we're doing is playing on the surface. And so I challenge you as a parent, I challenge you as a social justice change agent to think about the dynamics that you create in your own home. I had to do it. It was a hard look. It was difficult to do. But I would encourage you to really think about that and how you live those dynamics within your own home and what you're really teaching the children who share your life when you decide that you have the right to take away things from a child, to discipline a child in particular ways, to disempower them, and to diminish their voices. So thanks, and we'll see you soon.